Did you already YouTubing?
Theory.
Oh, I got it now. Is it?
Doesn't matter, you're here.
All right, cool, got it.
Yeah,
All the people
so
care
many,
about
so
here.
much bandwidth per brain, yeah. There you go.
Pick up the audio and-
Yeah,
Okay.
is it plugged in?
It's working.
Test, test, test. Test, test.
Check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, 1. Again, you're gonna my name.
Hello, hello.
Okay, that works.
So yeah, we're gonna have to be close. We'll start over here and then.
When you're looking right at it and talking at it, I can hear you great. But Carmen, if you turn your head away, you could all.
Okay.
So if anybody.
Check. We're gonna have to like speak towards
Speak at it, yeah.
the thing.
Into the computer.
Yeah.
You're still working up for imaging. Yeah, they've got the camper gate open.
It's like there's a bunch of traffic here.
The beat.
Good, how are you?
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think it's just it's like It's gonna be.
Mr. God, I take it we want two commissioners here.
That's what my assumption is.
Okay.
Give them a little more elbow room.
Very good. I like this room setup. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lance, their, permit is.
Yeah.
It's outside on the door.
Yeah.
Hey, Ron.
So
Next mission.
They have those private summits, right? And they all drive in their Jeeps like that. They don't buggy up.
Exactly, we're busy people.
Yeah.
Finally, I rode the bike.
Yeah.
We'll give you $1 million if that's okay.
I'm very comfortable.
Yeah, I don't want to hinder or here.
Hello,
Hi.
sorry for cruising in, I forgot how long it takes.
To get the Wi-Fi. So it's the one that's called School House. Public with a capital P, Wi-Fi with capital W.
You know, the family can
Where's my pen?
family. They all have their
Come on.
wishes. I'm sure.
Hi, Andrew. Yes.
Dealt with that in their life where-
We were talking after the meeting about whether you might make a few comments about the Front Street.
If you want me to.
Yeah, you would if you don't mind. Yeah, because not everybody was there.
Well, yeah, I'm gonna check in with everybody to see.
You know,
Perfect.
you know.
That would be great. We,
Basically, water and everything.
I thought about it.
And you know, garage. That was the house. He was just hit. He thought it was all-
okay.
And,
People come up.
Sit in the chair. Perfect. You didn't happen to bring the MOU to me sign?
Yes.
Did you? All right, well. I don't have a pen, I only have a pencil, I use my e-hearing. I got this. Oh, you're amazing. Okay. Here we go. Thanks.
yeah, my memory always, you know, it's my little brother.
Thank you, thank you.
Done.
Carmen.
Thanks, Carmen.
Yes.
So.
Hey, hey. It's been a lot of kids actually there. Well, we were said we were. So we say we're starting to listen session, but I. So she'll start. How do you want it? Or, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess we could say that updates are.
Well, so
Yeah.
let's talk. It's not.
No? Okay.
I mean,
It's obvious,
the
right?
survey.
Okay.
I just.
And then,
Speed sign.
yeah, they're all.
Yep. Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Amplification?
I saw blinking, we were going to 46, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
then we should go to Janet.
Yeah.
And have about traffic flow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then we talked about.
Well, now I can find a couple of talking about, we're gonna try to break. Chip deal.
Yeah, okay, good, good, good.
Okay.
And I think that's the big stuff, right?
Yeah.
Get the downloads now.
We're gonna start.
Okay.
However, we're just gonna line a goal of funding, goal has got other funding eliminated for this current year, so if it's my fault. So it's gonna be 100,000. It's unlikely, I just think we're planning. We're starting at 26.
Yeah.
We understand the dole is funded, maybe.
For this fiscal year, like July 1st to June 30th.
make it to school year. So we're gonna have to wait till the spring.
After their budget.
Or we bite the bullet and then we're gonna pay for it all.
You know, and that's just.
All right, we'll just say we have to figure out.
Yeah,
So,
we're
yeah.
figuring out.
Yeah.
It is our intention to start the process.
Okay, good. Okey doke. Maybe you can keep that over here. All right, good evening. Hi. Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's nice to see all of our Down Valley Friends faces, or many of them. I am Ann Brown. I'm the chair of the BOCC at this time. We take turns, we rotate. Present also, as you can see, is Galena Gleason, District 3. Is this your first Placerville Schoolhouse meeting?
It is. I've only been here as a citizen before, so.
All right.
Hi, everybody.
Here she
Happy
is.
to be here.
And Commissioner Waring is at a CC4CA meeting. He's sorry not to be here. CC4CA is something like Colorado Counties for Action, Climate Action. He's the president of that organization. And I believe this is his last meeting as the chair, and he felt it was important that he attend. So we scheduled this to make extra double sure that Galena was here. And so here we are. And obviously thanks to all the staff who are here as well. We already had a epic meeting in town, but we are now had a break. We're refreshed and we are happy to be here with you. So just a couple of things. This is more of an informal meeting. Normally we, time people's public comment and all that. We don't need to do that here. Although if someone goes on too long, I might interrupt. I used to be a focus group moderator, so I'm really good at that. I will mention that we are Zooming this meeting. We're so excited to have Starlink here. And so this is our single microphone. So if you don't mind, when you speak to all of us, if you could come and stand close to the microphone, you're welcome to sit in the chair maybe, then everybody except Carmen and Nancy can see you. But anyway, that's how that's gonna work. On the agenda, we had listed listening session with residents, update on previous meeting requests for action, and then other items as needed. We're gonna flip the first two. It probably makes more sense for us to start with an update on previous meeting requests, so you don't ask us what happened here that we asked you about last time. So we'll go ahead and start there. The first thing we are going to speak about is the gate. So as you recall, now I have to kind of remember the timing. We had it in place on an experimental basis for about a year, right? We wanted to go through all of the seasons and we did get mixed feedback from the community. We decided to conduct a survey to see how various members of the Down Valley community felt about the gate. And the majority, and Mike, correct me if I don't have this data on the top of my head, were in favor of keeping the gate because it keeps Front Street calm and safer. And that was, and we did pay a little bit closer attention. We asked where everybody lived, so we know who responded from Front Street, who responded from the Mesas and all that. To be fair, it was even more favorable among the Front Street residents, but it was generally favorable overall, a majority of the residents. So we did decide to keep the gate in place. So we can talk further about that if anybody has any comments or questions at this time.
Did we want to do any other introductions besides the board, or that's fine?
No, we should, of course.
Okay.
Sorry.
Great idea.
Yeah, I
Perfect.
apologize.
Just because we have some new faces here, not many, but unlike we're doing on the county manager.
Thank you.
I'm more of a county attorney.
And Maura is fairly new.
Yeah.
So, and already hitting the ground running.
Came from Oregon.
Yep.
Ryan McGay, Road Bridge.
Janet Cass, Parks and Open Space.
Kay Simonson, County Planning.
Carmen?
Carmen Warfield, Chief Deputy Clerk. Nancy Willis, Attorney's Office.
Jared Gibbs, Deputy County Manager.
Sorry about that.
So I apologize for that
No,
interruption.
I appreciate that.
And just along the lines of the gate, we know that community needs change over time. So if the Placerville community, it feels differently in the future, reach out to us, stay in contact. We can continue to survey the folks. The reality is we installed a gate that could be open for a reason. And as you probably have already heard, the fire department and other emergency responder folks have all access to that gate when they need to get in and out. But the survey was, as Commissioner Brown mentioned, pretty, I wouldn't say unanimous, but it was more than 80% said that they thought that the benefits outweighed the deficits of having the gate closed for now. So that's kind of, we reported that we showed the board the survey and they said, okay, let's stick with the current path. If things change in the future and we're hearing a lot of unhappiness or that it's no longer needed, we can revisit that, obviously.
And the other thing too, if there are ramifications of the gate remaining closed that we need to address, then obviously we'd like to hear about those and maybe we can work around some of those. So
we have a very easy way to email the Board of Commissioners. It's BOCC for Board of Commissioners, BOCC@SanMiguelCountyCO.com. It's on our website. .gov, I'm sorry. It's on our website, which is what I should have just said. It's pretty easy to find. And that will get your information to all three commissioners.
Great. Any other comments around the gate or yes? And if you wouldn't mind, at least the first time you speak, introducing yourself just for all of us here. And then again, we need you to come up by the microphone.
My name's Mark Britbeck. I'm a resident of Placerville. And I don't know whether it was reviewed and you're putting the gate in, the truck and trailer traffic that needs a place to turn around or that is filling the parking lot at the post office and makes it almost impossible to get into the post office because they've got no way to turn around and get out easily any longer.
That's interesting. So they're coming in to do what?
They're coming in to find a place to park, to enjoy the park, but they can't go down this way because the gate, their trailer requires a maneuvering that makes it very difficult for them to enter into the park. So they're parking at the post office in our parking spot there. The trucks have the same issue. It's like trying to turn a 40-foot trailer in once you get on this narrow street between without having an inlet and an outlet. So I don't know whether that was considered when you threw that gate in there, but it is a problem. And I've got to wonder about the fire department when they have to address something, if they don't find it more expedient to be able to go in two directions with their vehicle rather than have to get into a line and wait for the vehicle in front to move before they do, even though they have access to that gate.
Well, they can still.
They can open the gate.
Correct.
But if you're in a hurry, responding to an emergency, it's something somebody else has to remember to do is open the gate. It's like closing the gate. But anyhow, I don't know whether you took those items into consideration when you threw that gate in there.
Yeah.
There might be some animosity that the gate was put in there for other reasons, but I don't see that it serves any purpose other than to block a thoroughfare that we had that was very convenient before that we no longer have.
We took all of that into consideration, and the fire department was one of the first contacts that I made to get their opinion on it. And they're very in favor of having the gate because it works very well with their operations over there. They weren't concerned about their response time or anything like that.
And they never had any issues with anybody being in their way before.
Well,
but now it's easier for them to control their space, I'm sure. But as I said, if anybody pulls into this area with anything longer than a one unit vehicle, they're bound to having to park down in Placerville here or at the post office. And they've been using the post office parking, which makes it inconvenient for people trying to get to their mail.
Mark,
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Allowing me to address.
Bring
Yeah.
that point up, that's
and
something I hadn't.
I love
about yet.
technical fixes, so we're
Well-
gonna think of a way to address that.
Yeah, some things are easy, and I think when people are traveling through here, we're trying to make Placerville more friendly for anybody coming through. And what a beautiful park to have a picnic in.
Mhm.
But if you're pulling a camper trailer or something and you look down that narrow street, you go, I'm not gonna go down there. And we say, well, your solution might be, well, just walk. Well, it's nice to have everything there too, when you're with your family or you're visiting someplace new. And it's quite the view, you know, when you sit there in the park. I don't think we ever had to address overnight parking, but people still enjoyed it. Or they had a way of stopping there long enough to do a vehicle check before they proceeded out of here. And there's no way out of here but uphill. So you need something like that close to the intersection. And we'll talk about that later, I hope.
Thank you. Anybody else with reflections or suggestions, comments on how the gate is or isn't working? Okay, we will put our heads on that, Mark. Next
We want
up,
to jump to the post office since that was mentioned.
I'm sure. What did
Okay.
you want to say about the post
Well,
office?
just that I think everybody's aware the post office building is under new ownership. Matt Blackman and Harley Brook Hitchens have purchased it. There's an existing lease with the post office that goes through the end of 2026. And they're trying to renegotiate the lease terms with the US Post Office or Postal Service. I was able to speak to the postmaster, Roger in Telluride 2 days ago. And essentially Mr. Blackman was requesting a substantially higher price than they're currently being charged. The Postal Service did actually, it was yesterday and today, a analysis. They hired an appraiser to appraise we understand, and we've already drafted a letter that we're ready to hit send on, but we're gonna wait and see how their negotiations go before we hit send. Just reminding the Postal Service of the extreme importance that we keep this post office here. Sorry. Just wanted to
Thank you.
get that in.
Can I ask a question?
Andrew Dolise, yes.
Do you need me to come up since I'm right here?
I think you're probably okay.
Your voice
Project.
is projecting pretty well, yeah.
So does the county have any kind of a backup plan or a project plan in place that if those negotiations fall out, the post office there, and they can't come to terms with the deal, where would the county move the post office to?
That would be something more up to the Postal Service, because we don't really have empty lots that we own in Placerville that are like, we do up on the cliff, but that wouldn't obviously work. We will weigh in. We don't have a backup plan as of right now. But we'll be trying to figure one out. One of the benefits though, is that building, the leach field for the septic system is on county property. So when Harley and her son had first bought it, they said, hey, we want to continue to use that leach field at no cost. And we said, as long as it is serving as a post office, the county's not going to ask for any reimbursement for that use. However, if it should change and become a different commercial use, we will be seeking compensation for the use of county property. So that's a little bit of leverage that we have in this discussion. I am working on, for other reasons, like a gravel pit in the region, on other nearby properties that might be able to be suitable, but we don't have a good option B yet.
And Andrew, the lease doesn't expire until sometime in 2026. So we're staying on top of it. And should that negotiation fall apart, we will have time, to weigh in and help the post office find another site. I don't think that's going to be a problem. But we're just bringing it to your attention so that you know that we are apprised of the situation and paying attention.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay.
Signs next.
Yes, let's talk about the speed signs, which I just got flashed by on my way here, going 46 instead of 45. So that is something that we've heard a lot about from the Placerville or the Down Valley residents over the years, is the speed of the traffic through the whole canyon, but particularly as we approach and pass through Placerville, given all the traffic coming in and out. And so after our last meeting, the board voted to invest in caissons. What are they called?
Oh, the caissons are the mounts on the bottom. That the county actually paid the entire bill for both of those signs. It was just over $26,000, because we wanted to try that as a first step to try and reduce the speed to Placerville.
What signs?
They're the flashing speed limit signs. Yeah, that say the speed limit is 45 and you're going 46, slow down. So has anyone by chance noticed a
They
difference?
just went in. That was just this week that they were installed.
were
So
they?
we don't
Oh.
expect, we were
This-
promised by CDOT that they were gonna be installed in April. We called in April and they said, oh, we had some supply delays. Called again in May. We said, okay, we're meeting with the residents on June 11th. Those things have to be in, and so they finally
The
got.
county bears the expense of this, or
Yes.
safe on a state highway?
We
Correct.
did, yep, we did. To try, getting CDOT to invest in something is like a years-long plan that has to take place.
And population comes into play as well, unfortunately.
Sir, in the front, could you introduce?
Scott up here. Is there any way of monitoring the effectiveness of those signs? Are you like measuring speeds before and after the signs?
So not yet. We've talked about speed control with our new sheriff. As you guys know, on June 2nd, Dan Koval became the new sheriff of the county. He's been extremely responsive to the board's concerns and specific areas where speeding is occurring. So that's something we will be following up with Dan on. We did hear from the Saw Pit residents that when the signs were installed on either side of Saw Pit, that they have been effective. But that's only anecdotal. And the other reality is that there's one CDOT, our State Patrol officer. He's based out of Montrose and he has an enormous region. So I think we're going to be looking to our sheriff's office to monitor that more so than State Patrol. And just as a side note, as many of you know, one of the reasons there isn't more State Patrol presence here, or the reason that the Deep Creek shop is not staffed for CDOT is because they could not find housing for their employees. And they said, it's been such an uphill battle. They bring somebody on, they quit within a month or two. So that's one of the projects, one of our housing projects that we're working on jointly with CDOT that Jared can talk more about if you want to hear. We have 3 housing projects, one next to the sheriff's office in Ilium for on-call responders. We have dispatchers. The closest dispatcher that works there is in Norwood. We have some as far away commuting from Dove Creek. So we want to have a place for them to stay in between their shifts. The second is that CDOT, we're working to relocate CDOT's infrastructure over onto the county yard and to build a housing for Road and Bridge, State Patrol, and those CDOT employees. And then the last one's up at Pathfinder near San Bernardo on our gravel pit. And that will be available for the entire community. When, if, or not if, but when we build it.
Any other, actually, I'm meeting with the sheriff tomorrow, just like a initial meeting. And if there are any other in specific, just 1 second, areas in the canyon that you are noticing, especially high speeds, I could easily mention those to him tomorrow. Yes, Mark.
My house is at the intersection of 62 and 145. And I have video when Bill Masters was still the sheriff of traffic going through there 80 and 90 miles an hour. I'd be happy to present that to you if you want to address that issue too.
So is it people continuing on 62 onto 145? Where's the actual speeding taking place?
All
that's
the way through from Eric Malloy's place where the sign says 50.
Yep.
All the way through past Broderick's and on down around where you hit the first sharp corner.
Okay.
And then you might address with CDOT the fact that they've got a 50-mile-an-hour sign in the middle of a 35 and 40-mile-an-hour zone.
That's interesting.
Yeah, if you take a look at I don't know whether you've ever noticed it driving out of here, but when you come in, it's 40 miles an hour going from northeast to southwest. Coming in from the Norwood side, it's 40 miles an hour. Coming in from this corner, it's 35, but right at the bridge, there's a 50-mile-an-hour sign for the acceleration.
Huh.
Those speed limits are only for each direction. Not
I'm
for
aware
both
of that.
directions. So it could be 40 coming in and 50 going out on the same stretch of road.
They're not 50, it's 35, 40, and 40 with the 55, right, with the 50 right in the middle. I talked to it and they even admit that it was incorrectly put, but when they contracted it, you can see the aluminum pedestals on the ground out there. And there's 3 of them, and their safety department decided that maybe that was the best place to put it. But there's 2 void ones, so they have an opportunity to put it past the acceleration lane rather than, right at the beginning of the acceleration lane at the bridge.
We'll take a look at that. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Scott, what's your name? Yes, do you have something else to say regarding speeding areas?
Well, Mike knows more about it, but I mean, I'm assuming if this sign is set off by going over the speed limit, then that's creating some sort of signal that might be able to be monitored itself on how many clicks or like how many people are going over that speed limit, and maybe you could monitor it that way. Is there any like extra little box that you put on those things that would keep a tally of how many times it's been triggered?
That's a great question. I'll find out.
And then your thought was that over time it would be triggered less frequently?
Or just
Well, I
like being
think
able to
he's saying like,
monitor.
hey, if these are the specific times a day
Yeah.
or whatever that we're tripping it, let's
That
get
might
a,
be a really simple way to get data.
yeah.
Okay.
CDOT can put a GPS radio on it. And they have them available, and they will. They'll even put a camera on it if they'd like them to, but I don't think we want that.
Yeah, and I don't know how much more money we want to invest in this, and I think
Until
what
we
we
see.
until we see, exactly. So it'd be helpful to hear from people who are coming in and out of Front Street and along the road, if you've noticed any change anecdotally. And then if it feels like we need to gather more data, then we can consider investing in that. Axel, I think maybe since you're in the back row, maybe if you could come up, sorry.
Project?
Try.
Axel Cook, I just wanted to add to the speed thing, Norwood Canyon's out of control.
Yeah,
And I've
Big
heard,
trucks too, big trucks.
yeah, and I've also heard from residents further down 62 that it's just getting worse and worse and really dangerous. And it's a major concern with the increased commuter traffic, especially certain times of day. Typically in the evening when people are
Heading to
rushing
the
to get
barn.
home, and it's an issue.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's definitely in the last 2 years been an increased presence of the sheriff's office at the top and bottom of Keystone Hill. And it's been really effective at getting people to slow down. And I think that we have a great opportunity with a new sheriff that really wants to hear from people and be responsive to say, okay, we need that kind of action here in the Norwood Canyon or San Miguel Canyon in near Placerville.
it's a lot of man hours and, you know, they've got required, we only have 115 miles of paved road. But it's a lot of man, and I think there's other ways to address it. And I think if you would ask CDOT, because when they put the road in where it's at now, I insist that they do monitoring of decibels so that I would know what the speed limit should be. And that's an important issue too, because I think you get about 10 decibel rise for every 5 miles an hour a car is going over the speed limit. And some people around here don't even know to take off their snow tires. So it makes it even more exaggerated.
Thank you. Lynn, hi, Lynn Stanfield.
I feel, that it would be helpful to have something in those curves before the apple block turn. People go by there pretty fast and it's blind for all of us that are coming out and turning left. So I don't know, like a cars entering highway, or I'm not really sure the best way to handle that.
I saw that in the survey comments. 3 different people mentioned that. Yeah,
Coming out of Juniper Village
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
but you're talking about coming up Valley with the curves. If there was some notice that Juniper Village was coming up on the right,
Yeah, up valley.
that's where the traffic needs to slow down, right? They probably come out of the curves and accelerate, right?
Right.
Oh, necessarily that there's somebody that might be turning left.
This is a blind spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See a flashing yellow light on that last curve with one of those little T's that shows that there's a road coming up. Cause I almost hit a fire truck last year,
Okay.
cause they just were sauntering out of there. I was doing the speed limit.
I think we should have CDOT come to our next Down Valley meeting. Nancy. Yeah, I think we're gonna need,
Mango is not quite picking everybody.
okay, we're gonna need folks to come a little closer. I'm so sorry, but it's not because of this, the acoustics in here, it's not getting
Would it
through
be okay
to
if I
the,
just put it on the chair and put it closer? to the-
try that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the commissioners just project a little further.
Okay, great. So keep us posted.
Can you hear them?
Let's try. Can you hear us?
Check, check.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next?
I asked Janet to touch on, the work she's been doing on Front Street since we're staying with the theme of traffic and speed.
Great.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janet Cass, Parks and Open Space. I'm also a neighbor. I live up the road in Fall Creek. And some of you were at a meeting I held on May 14th, so just about a month ago with Ayers Associates. And so just to give you some background details for those who didn't attend that meeting, the county received an EPA grant. And the main purpose of the grant was repurpose and revitalization of historic structures. But there are also some other components of the grant where we can take into consideration area-wide planning concepts. So I will get up and share the storyboards with you. And the mic will pick me up. And I don't want to take over the meeting, but we have storyboards. So when we presented these at May 15th, May 14th, we had the notes, shared these with the community, and everybody was able to comment on the boards themselves. So red dots, not so much, not in favor, green dots in favor. And then we had various Post-it notes. I left all the original notes still on here. And I've got key takeaways and summaries. And what I wanted to just share with you tonight is, these are still the comments, as I said, from that meeting. But for those who aren't able to attend, you have the option and opportunity to view these tonight. And again, I don't want to sidebar the entire meeting, but what we've been talking about, we presented some renderings. And again, we wanted to better delineate traffic flow in front of the commercial merchants, Telluride Moto, M&M Mercantile, and just sort of break it up, slow cars down, maybe relocate bus stop. We've been discussing potentially closing off a curb cut and, and just an overall beautification effort. Something that would just really turn it around, not only with landscaping and plantings. Yes, and everybody's probably tired of hearing my flower boxes, but I would love to just get something in the area here that could, again, beautify the area and again, better delineate traffic flow and slow everybody down. And, we took it a couple of steps further where we even discussed maybe parklet areas, some decking. Again, we don't have a huge commercial district or commercial area, but just encouraging it to really designate the downtown with signage. It's not as if we hold festivals down here, but we want to be positive about it and forward thinking and just looking at it from a big picture, long-term perspective as far as what you want to see within your community. There are some issues that obviously come into play with closing off a curb cut, but CDOT is very much part of the conversation. So they have been supportive of a lot of these plans. And, and they had been invited to the meeting on May 14th. Unfortunately, they weren't available to attend. Sorry, somebody's going to get my backside. But anyway, so these are the storyboards that we share with the community. And again, it's the what the community may or may not want to consider, may or may not want to see. So the one thing that I highlighted at that meeting is with this grant, when it comes to the area-wide planning concepts, this is a planning and assessment grant. So what we're doing is proposing ideas, but as we mentioned then, and as I'll mention now, to actually bring these plans through to fruition, we would have to seek additional grant dollars, which we can do through our current grant. So, if we can get support of the community and, just take it through further steps. And I realize there are other issues that come into play with certain measures that we're proposing. But, I know everyone just says, oh, these are pretty pictures, and they are. But again, we want you to be part of the process, which is why, I shared all this information with the community a month ago, and I'm sharing with you now for those who weren't able to attend. So, so one thing I did is I brought different colored Post-it notes so that for those who want to add comments tonight, I'll be able to differentiate with, the previous meeting to tonight. But again, this is something that I don't, we had a casual approach a month ago where it was more of just milling about, discussing the storyboards, having the conversation. But I don't want to sidebar the entire meeting right now. You're welcome to view the storyboards, but if you want to stay focused with your tasks at hand, I am willing to stay later after the meeting and meet with everyone and just take this, other steps further and, take your comments and share more ideas.
What's a curb cut?
Oh, so the curb cut, so, like at the bottom of Grigg Avenue right now, that's an opening that breaks out onto 145.
You
So
want to get rid of an opening?
excuse me?
You want to get rid of an opening to 145?
Well, again, these are just proposals. Nothing is happening at this point, but it was just an idea, again, to better delineate traffic flow and slow traffic down. So one proposal is to close off that curb cut and relocate. Cindy from M&M Mercantile and Frankie from Telluride Moto, they've been part of the conversations as well. So Ayers has a former CDOT employee as part of their design team. So we have taken everything into consideration. So when you look at loading areas, delivery areas, we have looked at turning radiuses for 18-wheelers, delivery trucks, tractor trailers. So everything has been taken into consideration with these proposed renderings. And again, these are two different models here. So, and we had, well, with CDOT in the mix, Mustang is in the mix as well. So they know that we're talking about potentially moving the bus stop and just having it make more sense because it's kind of a little disjointed. And, and I've spoken to CDOT a few times because they're actually seeking additional grant dollars on their side to potentially add sidewalks and add curbs just to better define the area. Because right now, even driving up here, the road is lined up there and people are still parking in the middle of the road or they're going too fast. And, we have people who are trying to walk to the post office, walk to the Main Street area and the commercial downtown. So we just want to make it safer and again, just maybe add some landscaping there and just make it physically more appealing, but have the community part of the conversation and part of the decision-making process. I know our county commissioners are seeing this for the first time as well, as is our county manager, so I don't know.
I've seen some renderings in the past, and I will say CDOT has notified me that they do want to close at least one of the current 4 exits over there to have a more delineated traffic flow, but that's not what motivated this. What motivated this was how can pedestrians know where to park and walk safely on designated sidewalks to get to and from specific places in the town area.
Linda, did you want to comment?
Oh, I was just gonna talk about maybe allocating some time at the end of this meeting.
Yeah.
And shortening we're moving through a lot of our action items pretty quickly here, so we could probably designate a solid 20 minutes at the end. Around
Oh,
6:40,
sure,
so that
absolutely.
people can engage with this and not have to stay past 7 o'clock.
Okay,
Why don't
yeah,
we
and
do that?
like I said, I'm willing to stay as late as it takes to meet with each and every one of you, so don't view 7 o'clock as my cutoff time.
Well, we'll try to end up this part of the meeting around 6:40, and then there will be 20 minutes for those who do need to leave at 7. And
Janet ends up staying, that's very generous of you.
So, any other questions, or again, we can,
Any other questions for Janet at this point? And I think this too was meant to address, I guess Mike said this, the last time we were here, or several times we've been here, we've heard about the random parking and the, as you said, the cars moving too quickly, and I think.
Some of the turning radiuses in and out are not suitable, like if people are trying to turn it out with a truck or trailer, they're not all the same, so it makes it kind of unsafe.
well, we address many issues with these proposals, so.
Thank you, Janet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we are gonna pass it on to Kay Simonson, our planning director, who wants to just provide a bit of an update on the future of the Down Valley Master Plan.
Right, so back in 2019, we had a community meeting, we did a community survey. We were talking at that time about water and wastewater. And part of the outcome of that community meeting was we really do need a plan to go along with the concept of developing water and wastewater. Well, a lot of things happen in between now and then, and it keeps getting pushed off. But we are committed to engaging in that in 2026. So later this year, we'll be pulling together kind of project outlines and working to get an RFP out there so we can get a consultant on board, so we can budget for it. Also, if there's any grant funds available, probably through DOLA, I think, there's some good sources there. Key things that we'll be talking about in there, obviously infrastructure like water and wastewater, and transportation and roads, but also land use and housing. This plan will actually, I envision it as being all the way from Deep Creek to the bottom of Norwood Hill, and also extending partway up probably to about 56 feet up 62. So it's basically the San Miguel River Canyon. But then there'll be individual areas in there and communities that are emphasized and looked at separately. And one of the reasons for doing that is we have the Wrights Mesa Master Plan, which covers to Norwood Hill, and we have the East End Master Plan, which covers to Deep Creek. So we want to get everything in between. And then after that, probably the next thing would be to address the mesas themselves. But obviously this is, one of the major community centers. So really looking at that. The state, when we do plans, mandates that we have a housing element, or, we have a housing component, a recreation component, and there's one more that I'm forgetting right now. So the state mandates certain things, and it's other topics that are important. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll be, having lots of community engagement and community meetings, and looking at different ways to reach out to people as we go through that process. But that'll be 2026.
And are we gonna form, similar to the East End Master Plan, some sort of an advisory group of citizens to give feedback?
Most likely there will be an advisory group. We're ways from making that final decision, but that's just a good way to do planning, is to have an advisory group.
And that's a way for citizens to have really direct feedback on the plan and.
Yeah, so if people want to start thinking about who in the community might like to participate in that work group, and or recruit your neighbors who you think might be effective, that would, for 2026.
Yeah, when we're ready, there'll be a lot of PR, we have almost everybody's contact information. So when we're getting ready to do things, we send out email blasts. We run ads in the paper, we do our social media, we put it on our website. So there's a lot of ways for people to get informed. But the way we formed the advisory committee for the East End Master Plan, we advertised, we had a number of applicants, and then the Planning Commission selected, since master plans are adopted by the Planning Commission, they selected, they helped us with that project.
No, we're gonna go to the drainage.
Okay.
I'm surprised, right?
But any other questions about the master plan and that plan for the plan? Sounds like a government meeting.
Is there anything in the county's, foresight of where you could possibly identify a wastewater treatment plant to go? Because my understanding has always been is that once we put the fire department in down here, we lost our last best chance of having, a sewer and a processing plant.
Well, that's gonna be part of it. When we write the request for qualifications or proposals, whichever we do, we articulate what sort of things we're looking for, and one important component will be water and wastewater infrastructure, and coming up with preliminary plans. So that it might be that they identify a number of different options. Wastewater can be much more compact and dispersed with package systems. If we decide to pursue a water system that's much more complex, you know, you have to get water rights and all of that. But a water treatment plant isn't that big. So it's a matter of, you know, do we want dispersed wastewater or do we want one big wastewater facility? And that's all going to be part of the consideration. And I don't think, you know, the plan won't necessarily make the final decision, rather it'll outline some considerations and some things that, it starts heading us in the right direction for the next step.
Okay.
One thing I might mention, just one second, Scott, is that today the Board of County Commissioners signed a memorandum of understanding between the three jurisdictions, the main jurisdictions, the two towns, Town of Tyree, Town of Mountain Village, as well as San Miguel County, regarding how the new sewer authority will be formed to manage a regional wastewater treatment plant, which is quite likely to go just upriver from the CDOT and San Miguel County Road and Bridge Department. And the commissioners and staff worked very hard and long advocating for the interests of residents in San Miguel, in unincorporated San Miguel County. And that included all the sort of HOAs and subdivisions up on the east end, that they would have access to service by that wastewater treatment plant, as well as a indication that the wastewater treatment plant would be sized at a sufficient capacity to accept septage from throughout San Miguel County. That has been a big concern of ours since the plant at Society Turn has reached capacity. And we know how expensive and difficult it has been to get septic tanks emptied. And that was something that happily the towns understood the importance of, and we included that that point in the MOU that we have signed, and with every indication that the two towns will be signing that this week and next week. Correct?
It does say that they shall accept septic, not that they may. So.
We worked on that pretty hard.
Yes.
Well, when you address that sewage issue, realize putting in a trunk line might be easier than you think, but the taps to that trunk line become even more expensive in the topography we're in. So you're only supplying a few people again, but you're putting a mill levy on everybody else if you create that authority throughout the district of Placerville.
So there's no, are you talking about Placerville tapping into the regional wastewater treatment plant?
Well, you talked about creating a separate authority, was what you were talking with Mountain Village and Telluride
Sorry.
about, so you could get a greater mill levy.
No, okay, that's for further up valley, so it would collect sewage.
That's
from,
fine up valley, but
but
when you start
there
raising
is-
our mill levy for
Excuse me,
them, that's
Mark.
another issue.
Mark, there's no mill levy intended to be associated with the sewer authority. There will be capital investments by the two towns, not by the county, because the money that they are anticipating having to put into that, we just don't have in reserve. So it's really the sewer authority will be formed by the two towns. We will have a San Miguel County, an advisory seat, a non-voting advisory seat, but it is anticipated that any loan or bonds that need to be issued to construct that will be serviced by the fees, not by a mill levy.
And furthermore,
if there was to be a mill levy, it would be a vote of the people. And it would not be for this area because this area is not in their future service area that they've shown. If there were to be a desire for a regional plant that would serve down valley, then there would need to probably be a funding mechanism like that, something like that, because we don't have the 30 years of fees that they've been collecting and holding in reserves toward that capital investment. In the 2019 study that Kay mentioned, the cheapest cost of the entire thing was the package plant. The more expensive was the purchases of right-of-ways, the pipe, and the taps, to your point. And we understand that, which is why the other thing is the county would not run it. It would be its own governmental authority, as it is in other unincorporated areas. So if that's what the survey says and people want it, then we will help facilitate and work on that process with you, but it's not something we're looking to shove down anybody's throat. Furthermore, 30% of the people in that survey from 2019 had replaced their septic systems and leach fields within the last 10 years. So we know that there's a significant portion that is feeling like they're fine. They don't really feel this need. And so to Commissioner Brown's point, I think you're more likely to see if there's a smaller area, such as townside of Placerville or Salt Pit area that says, you know what, we want to create our own package plan. We can help work on that with them, but it's not something we're looking to impose on
Good, thank you.
Well, I just wanted to speak to the septic a little more because most households down valley are on septic, and the way it currently stands, you know, the price for pumping and hauling septic right now has almost doubled in recent years. And so it's been a real concern that hasn't been accepted within the county. And so, I mean, that's why Commissioner Brown, I think, foremost brought this up and brought this to the awareness of this group, that we really advocated for septic being accepted at that regional wastewater treatment plant, even though it's further east and, you know, it's technically down valley and all county residents won't be within the boundaries of that sewage authority. But we wrote in that memorandum of understanding that septic from throughout the county will be accepted at that point.
And unlike a district, which has an associated mill levy, authorities in this situation, what they're proposing is not a district. So they're not looking to do this via a mill levy. As Commissioner Brown said, they're looking to do it based off of what they've collected plus their own reserves plus the user fees.
And one thing that the towns requested is that there be some consideration given for timing in terms of dropping off septic. They don't want people emptying their septic tanks on Christmas Eve when they're otherwise, you know, processing a lot of sewage, or during festivals or things like that. But we felt that was an easy give to say that we would, you know, have a schedule ahead of time that we would all know when septic could and couldn't be dropped off. So that was a consideration. Axel.
I have a question about, is there that much density planned in the Placerville area that we need to talk about a sewage treatment plant? I mean, is there potential for that many more residents, and is there a current problem with septics?
That analysis that is gonna come out of the plan, we know that we have a lot of septic siting issues, especially within Placerville. You know, systems that are not.
But is there a current problem though? Is there a reason we're looking at that? Is there a problem?
We're gonna do the plan so you can tell us if there's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. We know, you know, we've had to work through a lot of very complicated solutions to get septic systems onto people's property. You know, I know of properties that just have holding tanks. There are properties where the septic or the leach field isn't on. You mentioned the post office. The leach field isn't actually on that property. We require a minimum number of a certain number of lots in order to develop or to build a new structure. And that's because that's what's necessary to get the separation between a well and a septic system. So in the plan, when we're doing the planning, we'll talk about that. and figure out, what people actually want. And, in terms of land use and how that ties into, infrastructure and being able to serve it with all the necessary utilities. So to be determined.
So we haven't yet quantified the need, but there certainly are anecdotal evidence that there are people who are struggling with current septic systems or needing to replace them in the future. So that's, again, part of the plan.
So I would think Norway would have a greater need than what's working now in Canada.
They just got grants for their water.
Well,
Sort of.
they got put on the congressionally directed spending request, also that used to be called pork. So we're really excited for them, but we're also not holding our breath given the cuts that we've seen the federal government.
And that CDS, congressionally directed spending is, that request has been prioritized by our congressman and by the two senators. It has not been awarded yet or earmarked, but it's a step in the right direction.
But they do have some infrastructure in place because of their community, their home rule or their Norwood independence.
So there's the
Yeah.
Norwood Water District and the Norwood Sanitation District. And so they fall under the state statute for that organizational structure. And I mean, they manage that system, they fund that system. And yeah, there's definitely some issues with regard to their water system, also with regard to their wastewater system. And they're actively working on it.
But back to the master plan, it really is, it's a guiding document that is coming from the views of the current community when it is drafted. So it is a great opportunity for all of the Down Valley community to bring their thoughts, concerns, visions forward to devise a plan for the future. And there hasn't been a master plan for the Down Valley area specifically. All that existed previously was the Telluride Regional Area Master Plan, TRAMP, which really was more focused on Telluride itself. But since the East End Master Plan was formulated, then the next steps are to actually create this Down Valley Master Plan.
Scott, did you have a question or comment?
I did. I think you said we've been talking about this since 2019, the Down Valley Master Plan, and it's still another year before we actually get to doing it. Obviously, from the outside, that seems silly and kind of like it's a plan. Why aren't we? By the time we make a plan, it's all going to be changed anyway. So why are we going through all this effort to make a plan 30 years out? By the time we hit 30 years, it's going to be changed. We're going to plan again and take another 7 years to plan to make a plan. So I'm just curious why would it take 7 years to just get to the point where we might start making a plan? And I know it's a speed just of government topic, but I'm just curious so I can get caught up because I know you keep alluding to this. We keep having meetings about it and we keep trying to give input to it. And then you come back and it's like amnesia, like we haven't talked about it every.
That's fine. So the survey that Kay was referring to in 2019 wasn't the kickoff of the plan. That was to just look at water and wastewater concerns, since that's what the Board of Commissioners was hearing were the biggest issues in the Placerville area. It was always said that they would do the Telluride Regional Area Plan first. So they were in the process of starting that when COVID happened. And they didn't want to have a situation where only these could be happening via remote meetings. So we paused on that. And then the community demanded about a year of additional public meetings. So then we honored that. Then the cost increased, then we had to fund that. And then we finally got that done. Their last one was 30 years ago, so it was almost 30 years. Master plans are typically updated every 15 to 20 years. And that's the schedule we want to get on. But we've also learned through that process that we don't ever want to shortcut the public input and making sure that everybody's had their chance. So part of it was COVID, part of it was funding, and the bigger part beyond COVID was the unexpected length of the Telluride plan, because there were so many people that wanted to be in in-person public meetings and not do anything over Zoom.
Okay.
People have been here 30 years.
Screwed them left and then came back.
I saw you in Grand Junction. so.
Yeah.
Scott, was there a follow-up to that?
Yeah, but I mean,
Yes.
specifically, there sounded like there were questions about the need for wastewater before, and I feel like there were multiple meetings, and so you're saying you still don't have enough data to determine if that's a need?
And prior to 2019, I can't remember exactly what year, because it was while I was up in Mesa County. I think, there was an actual engineering study that looked at building, a wastewater treatment plant in the area. And there were engineering costs and all of that associated with it. Those are so far out of date now, that really can't rely on that. The other part is doing a plan and doing it right takes a lot of resources, from staff, from elected and appointed officials, and from the community. And so trying to keep within our capacity, everybody's capacity has been a consideration. And we adopted the East End Master Plan about a year ago. And in that time, we actually had a lot of overlap with the solar regulations that you might have heard about. And then from there, we've moved into mining and the other natural resources. So we've had a lot of community engagement about a lot of things. In that time.
I think another factor worth pointing out is the Northwest Council of Governments did a study in 2021 about the influx of people into all resort and mountain communities during COVID to understand, are they here temporarily? Is this the new norm? Forest Service was reporting a 200% increase in the number of people using our national forest in our area. And the study essentially said in 3 years, a significant portion are going to go back to where they came from. And we've actually saw that to be true. So I don't think it would have been a good thing to say, here's the future for Down Valley and Placerville at that time when we have kind of an influx of people that might not be here.
Sure, I'm just pointing out that you mentioned that you've taken surveys on whether or not the gate is a good idea or not. Why aren't we doing a simple survey on, is there a need for wastewater? If you can do those surveys, why can't we be ahead of this 2026 by gathering data now? If you have potential surveys, we can be telling you right now if we need wastewater or not. So that kind of can also help you sculpt this greater master plan with more information about where you might need to put your time and effort, so that way we're not having more and more meetings about having more and more meetings. And just to ask a question that you could ask us in a survey.
So when we did the East End Master Plan, I would envision a fairly similar process. We started with focus groups on specific topics. We had a bunch of pop-up events all over. We might not have as many events, but here. Where we asked people to come in and tell us what their issues and concerns were. And then we used that to help create a survey that asked about the whole gamut of all the topics that are going to go into the plan. So there will definitely be another survey, and it'll be very informative and key part of that plan. But we would like to do it at a time and involving our consultant, so that it truly is useful and asks all the questions that they need.
And that's not the only information we'll be gathering, right? There will be questions for the community on many other subjects. And so to have kind of a one-off, do you want a wastewater treatment plant, not understanding what the trade-offs are, what that might cost. So it really, I'm sorry to say, does need to be done holistically. And so please just bear with us. It's on the agenda for 2026, and that's where it sits right now. So here we are.
There was surveys a couple of years ago about water and wastewater. Couple years ago.
We had that.
And then from hearing those that have been here for 30 years, there's been surveys on and off for 30, 40 years.
We've talked about it. It's Yeah, 40+.
I think the last survey was in 2019, is that correct?
The last survey specifically on water and wastewater for this area was in 2019.
Okay.
And then you had your.
And it was not unanimous, because when folks were like, okay, well, what would this do? And it was learned, it could allow for greater density, it would definitely be an increase in taxes. And especially those folks that had decent septic systems were like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So I think if we had heard a unanimous, like, yes, we need this, we want this, we would have been coming back and saying, yeah, let's do this. Instead, we were getting actually a more tepid response than encouraging. So we went, okay, let's wait until we get into the down valley master plan, thinking that we were gonna be in life as normal.
Scott, before we come back to the lady behind you,
Alma or
Alma,
I
hi.
just wondered if the master plan for water might include a bulk water dispenser. Like our well currently doesn't produce enough, we have to go all the way to Nagarita or Pomona to get water. Because Norwood won't let us use their door outside of their water.
Even though we pay Norwood
Yeah.
School.
Okay, so a water dock,
That certainly is a point that could be brought forth and requested in a master.
In the survey.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
don't remember the survey.
I would think that'd be a first step to getting water to Placerville, is to have a water station.
Yeah.
To know if it's even viable.
They talked about a water tank, then you gotta have water rights.
Right, that's the hard part of this equation, is the water side. Sewage thing, back to my question is, does the health department currently have any problems in the county?
I think Kay addressed that, and I think we kind of covered this, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, is it Don in the back?
Yeah, Don Grelsford.
Yeah.
I was on the county planning commission for a number of years, quite a while back. And I'm kind of used to kicking this dead horse around, but it's, not, the solution that I was hearing from the people here is actually, we want the problem. There is a real problem with the septics and stuff like that, but they're using that because it limits the size, you have to have 5 lots.
To manage growth, using that to manage growth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's managed growth, so they don't want back there, they don't want that many people there, so we don't want this thing. And then the thing is, over the years, all these meetings, just like this one, we get the problem, there is some serious health issues with septic things like in classes. But every time there's a study, it gets bigger and bigger, and then we're gonna take up the Mesa, and we're gonna go down, all the way to, and then all of a sudden, Placer is too expensive. The problem is Placerville, we need to focus on Placerville. And the thing, but I keep saying, and I don't know why, I'm arguing against it, is this well right here, when they drilled it for here, what's this one, they drilled it. Produced like 150 gallons of milk, or something like that, I got the record. But anyway, seems to me like water, nobody in Placerville has decent drinking water, some do, but very few. And if we had a good source of water, supplied it to Placerville, then the sewage thing wouldn't be such an issue of, septic too close to a well, blah, 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 blah. But everything just gets to be so big because there's a rabbit bites the wrong house. Anyway, that's what I have to say about it.
Thank you for
But
that.
the water situation, if we had a good well supplied water, everybody would have good water. The septic issues wouldn't be nearly the sanitation, the sewer wouldn't have to be such a priority. And that's gotta be a lot more expensive to treat sewage than treat water.
I think that's an interesting, point.
That's an extremely good idea, Mr. Rutherford. And
That's the first time anybody agreed with me.
it's really forward thinking. And speaking of the planning commission that you previously served on, there is currently an open seat on the county planning commission. And I would love to see that seat being filled by someone in District 3, especially with this Down Valley Master Plan. Ian Bald currently sits on the county planning commission. He does live here down Valley. But especially with this master plan coming down the pipe, if any of you or you know anyone who would be a great candidate to apply for that seat, it would be a really good thing to bring a voice from the community here. So I thought I'd just throw that out there. Maybe you want to get back on that commission, sorry.
It's an alternate seat, but historically, the alternates tend to kind of get trained, and then as people roll off the voting membership, the alternates tend to roll on, and the alternates are very much involved in all of the discussion. It's just a matter of whether the full commission is there and they would have a vote or not.
I sat as an alternate on that board for a while, and they heard plenty of my opinion, I can tell you that. And yeah, it is a really effective commission to sit on to really help shape land use and planning.
I forgot your name, Kathy Barber's husband.
Fletcher.
Yes, Fletcher. Thank you, Fletcher.
I live on 4th Street and I kind of run in some civil engineering circles. And I just want to echo what Don said, is my understanding of the easiest way to deal with the situation is if you supply more quality water, it opens up a lot of land for additional on-site water treatment plants. So just echoing that.
Really good.
Makes sense to me too.
Thanks, Fletcher. Scott, did you have a follow-up?
I did, going back to your point about the questions and surveys, and I appreciate that you guys are trying to approach things holistically and, be comprehensive because it is a complex issue. But what's not complex and what's easy data to get is a simple survey saying, do you have problems with your septic system? If so, what are those? And if you can get that minimal information, that will also help you focus in when you do have a broader meeting that needs to be more holistic. You give options, so you know what to address in those meetings, so the meetings don't get too sprawled where everybody gets spun around and says, well, that's a really big question. I guess we'll have to think about it for 7 years. So I think if we can work incrementally, there's really simple data that can be gained from very simple surveys that can be done right now to get data, to move behind what people's needs really are and start thinking about ways to address that in advance. So it's not a 2026, Super Bowl of information and balancing and all that. So I slightly disagree with not at least approaching it in small increments now.
Okay, I'm not sure that is possible, but the point has been heard and taken. Thank you, Scott. All right, anything else on the 2026 Down Valley Master Plan? Okay, yeah, Scott.
Status of the bike path.
Okay.
Oh, Down Valley Connector Trail?
Yeah.
Can we move through the topics that we have, and then we're gonna open it up to the next session? No, that's not. No, that already has a plan, and we can update you on that, but if it's okay, we'd like to stick to the agenda that we have, and then we will open it up for other topics of conversation. What is next?
The drainage blowouts from Surprise Drive. We hired an engineer, Ryan hired an engineer, to evaluate and give us potential solutions to address that forever issue. And I'll give you the very short version. There is no good solution to it. Without condemning multiple homes to redirect water to its historic path and have it end up on the horse pasture where it originally did, it will continue to report there. So we tried working with the engineer. Ryan had this idea of, let's try catchment basins and ways to slow down the speed of the water and the amount of material that it was bringing out. And so he directed his crews. They did that last fall. We saw it, or Ryan went and checked it after this most recent rainstorm. We know that wasn't the torrential rains that we had, last summer. But so far it was showing to be effective. So we're going to continue to monitor that. It's something that will require continued maintenance and clean out to make sure that it doesn't just fill up with sediment and overflow. But it is so far showing an improvement in the drainage and less debris coming down onto the roads. We engaged with CDOT to think of another solution, and their idea, we were originally thinking, could we just allow it to go down Second Street and then come out and then upsize all the culverts? We received a $500,000 estimate for the CDOT culvert under the highway portion. And then we would have also had to upsize all of our culverts. And it would have still had debris running across the road. So we said, you know, let's try this interim step that is far less costly. And the other consequence of the CDOT solution was they said they would actually prefer not to have that culvert upsized, but to create a French drain. They wanted to close off one of the entrances and create a massive French drain in that area adjacent to the highway. So there's still some ideas that could be on the table down the road, but we wanted the least amount of disruption and the least amount of cost, honestly, to try and address it, because everything after this solution gets into significant solutions that aren't necessarily guaranteed to work.
Fletcher?
Yes, thanks. About a month ago, backhoe drove into the wash there and did a number on the whole sandy silty area. Was that you? Was it that?
That was
Friday?
Tom.
That was Tom.
Oh,
That was-
Sir, in the front here, remind me of your name?
Yes, my name is Matt Steen, a property owner on Front Street, and I've a property that's been damaged by the flooding from the wash. And you guys are aware of that. Is there any, or can I request any buy-in from the county to put up your own like berms or concrete barriers rather than having all of us homeowners do these road berms on your property?
Well, I can tell you right now, we haven't done anything to change or alter redirect any of that water that's in this. All of that redirection has been on private property, or it's been done by private residents. And so my recommendation as representative for the county is that we don't do anything to add to that or change or alter the direction of any storm water that's going on.
When the county alters the historic flow by our doing, we take on the liability of any impacts and damage that occurs. When it's been done in private, then unfortunately, it's technically a civil matter. And unfortunately, the people looking at the properties who's done it, and they're pretty easy to see which ones, they've all turned over into new property owners as well.
Well, if we were to turn the clocks back, that original house up there was approved by the county.
Bill Masters stuff?
No.
That one?
No, the one that's right in the middle of the wash. So
That
I
garage.
would say it does land in the county's hands because that was approved.
There are several throughout the corridor, if you look, that are in drainages. Doris dealt with one at her place and had to put in that, and spoke with CDOT about putting in that large culvert that's down there. At different times.
Yeah.
Is what we're dealing with, and the responsibility, because once you start diverting water, somebody's got to be accountable to where and who's damaged by it. And we live in the mountains, and if you've moved here and you think water doesn't flow downhill, you've never been on the right end of an idiot stick.
Can I just clarify for myself that what Mike was talking about was the county's attempt to work with the current kind of the current drainage that has been developed over time by the neighbors, but to slow the movement of the water through that drainage, correct?
Well, we're trying, all we've done so far is just try to create something that it's still gonna flow on the pattern that it was on.
Right.
But it's just gonna slow it down and give it an area for the heavier sediment to be able to settle out before the water travels through and continues on. Once it goes across 4th Street, then it hits a feature that was created not by the county, and then it alters the flow from that point. And then from there throughout the community, it's been changed from resident to resident and property owner to property owner as it goes down through the community. Everybody has done something on their own, without authorization from the county, but they've done something on their own and redirected it. All we're doing is conveying across the county roads, and it's conveying through the county roads and through our infrastructure, but we're just trying to help it along its way to the river so that it does the least amount of damage as it conveys across the county property.
And I appreciate that you guys tried to do something. I don't think the problem is the velocity of water. It's the volume of water, and it's at a low velocity, so it's still gonna go and still gonna cause the same problems. If there's storage up there, which is very minimal, it's still gonna, I think we're still gonna run into the exact same problem, but I do appreciate the effort of the county to do something. But the flags are being waved, and we've had these emails before, but as a property owner, you have the right to defend your property from surface water coming down, but as an upstream property owner, you do not have the right to divert surface water to cause harm on someone below you. And so if you were to follow this trend up the hill and back in time, I think it goes back to the county approving that house or that garage in the middle of the wash. And if it were to go to potential, lawyers moving up, they're just gonna look for the next person to blame, and it probably would go back to that time frame of approving a structure in the middle of a wash.
Well, as far as blue water, when I first came here, when I first started, one of the things I was looking at in the budget when I was reviewing my corner, and I asked him, I said, what's this $30,000 in Placerville drainage? He said, oh, we've had that as a placeholder for 30 years. He said, there's a big problem there, and we have to do something about it. Somebody's gonna have to deal with it someday. So he just put that in the budget, and it's just floated there forever. We used it to do this engineering. We used it to try to, to your point, we didn't have, and Kate can confirm this, but the county didn't have grading plans for requirement of a building permit back in the day. So today, or if you do submit a plan now, you have to show how the water enters and feeds your property, how you grade it, how it changes it. So that might have had an issue, or that might have had an impact on the approval of that house back in the day. I don't know. But if they didn't take that into account when they were approving houses back then. So I'm just speculating.
The engineer, what size culverts were they recommending?
No, there was no culverts.
No, in there.
Yeah.
No, like the engineer, you walked around with them and you looked at the problems. Was he recommending any culverts like on any of these streets where it crosses Surprise?
Technically, no, because that would have been diverting the water. But when we looked at, okay, if we're gonna upsize the CDOT culvert, then the next upstream issue is gonna be the county culverts, which are 18 to 24 inches. We were looking at a 4-foot diameter culvert underneath the highway. But I still don't think that was going to address the issue, because depending on what size storm we have, still gonna inundate all those.
And would the county work on improving the ditch on the uphill side of 2nd Street, or are those culverts under driveways, or those private culverts, or those county culverts?
All the driveway culverts, so those are owned by the property owner, and then responsibility of the property. So that, and then that ditch that flows along that side, and it's still, however the road is angled, it's gonna flow that direction, even if the ditch was deeper there. It would be on the side where everybody's parking. The ditches right now are bigger than the culverts in the area. Most of the culverts get smaller as you get further closer to the river. So
Well, that's backwards.
36 inch culvert to a 30-inch culvert, or 24 to a 12.
That is backwards.
How can they can we address having CDOT here at some time in the future? Because that's poor engineering to even do that.
Yeah, and along Front Street, there's a lot of other conflicts. We have like transmission lines for power and gas that run right up and right across where we live. So all of that infrastructure would have to be relocated or stuff.
That's
So that's probably why there's a 12-inch culvert.
And that's why CDOT needs to be here to address that, because I noticed somebody's had the utilities marked here recently for some purpose. And they just did the gas line through, so, you know, there's been work done. But to have a hydrological system that's built backwards isn't even safe for the community.
Well, unfortunately, you can see when.
This place didn't have a plan, I know.
Exactly.
You're standing on the road now.
Is this something that would be addressed in the master plan, drainage through the town of, or the Placerville town site? Or is that?
Yeah, master plan would identify goals and general actions. And then it would be up to us to, or whichever party to implement the actions, so. You know, stormwater drainage could definitely be an action, but the plan won't solve it.
But it will help identify what kind of priority that is for the community? Okay, Matt?
Can I just clarify, so the county's not, you're not committing to changing the course of surface water. But can you commit to some sort of improvement of culverts with this 30,000, which isn't very much, but improving with homeowners, these culverts that are failing and causing problems for the community? Under driveways or, anything just to help move the water to the river?
We can send letters to them to say that, they're trying to bring their, their driveway access points into compliance with today's standards, but I mean, a lot of the culverts that they put underneath there, they're 8-inch culverts, they don't even meet the requirements. We haven't, they've been in there for.
So that's what
we haven't been actively going after violations that were, if it doesn't conform with today's standards, we're not going after stuff that's been there for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Making people correct those, and trying to correct them, the newer stuff we're gonna start with to ensure that whatever we do, it's done to today's standards. But then if somebody's gonna rebuild their driveway or they want to change something, then we'll make sure that they change it and improve it to today's standards. But if it's failing, we can notify them. We've sent quite a few correction notices out to different people in this community before, and we get zero response from them. I can tell you that much.
Well, that's it.
It's not.
Are you saying, you're saying more like incentivize them instead of penalize them? With 30 grand.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
keep in mind, 30 grand was for the engineering. We spent the bulk of that already on that. The study that said you gotta either condemn property or
just.
Well, I guess.
Is there some other incentive that we can think of that could potentially allure homeowners to address this? I'm just throwing this out. I don't have any ideas, but
The incentive that
works shut that.
the incentive that they don't have.
I'm sure that they're not impacting their neighbors, but fortunately.
Not 3 feet of mud in front of your house, 3 feet of mud in your house.
So I guess.
Let's try to keep this, one person at a time.
Jared
So,
has something.
Jared, yeah.
I was just gonna suggest that we can take this feedback back to the drawing board. We can look at other programs that incentivize, like a 50-50 culvert match. You actually wanna fix your problem, we'll help you with it. But we know that it is each property owner's problem, right? And we need everybody to recognize that, cop to it. And if we can figure out a way to put some carrots out instead of just sticks, maybe we can figure something out. But I think that we can take this feedback and we can go back and say, this is one of the higher priority items. We know we had it last year. I was looking through my notes from last year. It was a significant issue then. I don't think it's changed, right? And if we get a similar runoff year like we had last year, I'm sure we're going to hear about it at our fall meeting, right? But I do feel like we can take this feedback back, and I would encourage you to talk with your neighbors, because we're all kind of pussyfooting around saying, yeah, we know there are people around here who might have a problem, and we're going to have to confront those folks and say, hey, can we do something about it? And if the county comes to the table with an option, can we coax those folks into solutions?
So I think this is something we might consider during our budget process, Ryan, if maybe your team could get an assessment of how many property owners there are that need some incentive incentivizing to make adjustments, and then we could consider whether that's something we can budget for. Does that make sense?
There's
Yeah.
really one property owner and that property is about to change hands again. It's under contract and gonna close here in June or in late June. And that property owner is probably very unaware of what they're walking into. And let's just be honest, let's call out the elephant in the room. It's that garage. So if you want to incentivize all the property owners, it's go to that property owner and incentivize that property owner to take down that garage, be compensated in some kind of way, whether it's a tax structure, a monetary structure, something like that, divert the water back to the horse pasture where it naturally wants to go and where it belongs. And then we could take down all the berms in the neighborhood and we wouldn't have all these culvert issues.
Is it just that one building?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because the engineers, I thought we had said maybe it was more than just that one building.
Can I say
They did a debris flow analysis and showed that it would inundate more than just that building.
Sacco?
when the big mudslide happened? I don't
5, 6 years ago?
Oh, no, maybe longer than that. Okay, when Jay Simon built that house, that was fine, the house was in the right place. He built that garage and we went to him and said, what are you doing? He said, well, I never see any water in here. A couple years later, when that thing let go, it flew through the back of that garage, took the car that was in it, threw it out the front door to another car that was parked there. And then it proceeded to go down across our driveway out in, flooded Kent Bryant at the time, his whole place with mud and debris. So we hired a hydrologist to go up and look at everything, a bunch of people chipped in money. He basically said, you can spend $1.5 million up there. Mother Nature wants to, it'll be down in your driveway. Okay, but the garage in that Arroyo was really stupid. I don't know who approved it, the county must have approved it, and he put it in. And, even if the garage wasn't there, we'd still go across our driveways. Culverts, 3-foot culverts, 4-foot culverts filled up instantly with mud.
Yeah.
Instantly. It's just a waste of money. I'm sorry, I've watched it happen a few times, In fact, Jimmy Moody and I just redid our driveway and that drainage again. Cost me $1,300 and him $2,300. And it's gonna happen again.
Yeah.
It will happen again. Those firms that are there will just divert it. But if it goes big enough, it doesn't matter what we do. Period.
That makes sense. I'm not sure, Matt, though, that you're talking about the mudslide of 5 years. You're talking about heavy rain that happens multiple
Just
times.
rainwater.
A season, is that
That's a
correct?
different
Yeah.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's usually just like microbursts in this one drainage river.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
or the one of two, the other one comes out right here by the Mercantile.
Okay, so I think that we directed staff to kind of do an assessment of which properties need to be addressed and to come to us with a proposal for how to incentivize those property owners to make it right for the people downstream. Fletcher, did you have something?
Yeah, just a quick clarifying question, just for historical understanding, I want to make sure the garage, west or east of Fourth Street?
No, it's on Third Street.
Jamie.
Like,
That's what, right? That's my understanding.
and he didn't build it, but
Yeah.
it's there. I mean,
It's.
And is that the property that's about to change hands?
No.
No, not Jimmy.
Oh,
That's why I just wanted to clarify.
The one that's gonna change hands is way downstream of
No,
it?
it's upstream.
Oh, okay.
The one with the garage.
No, Jimmy's garage is what he's talking about.
Oh, yeah.
The other house, Pape's house.
Okay.
You want to go?
Can I just make just one more suggestion?
yeah,
When evaluating these culverts, looking at property lines and seeing where the culverts land, if it's county or if it's someone's home, or if it's private property. For the instance of Second Street and those culverts, if it is private property, they don't have any incentive because they're upstream of the flow. So I'm just saying, just like when you're pitching this to someone for a 50-50, they're like, why would I want to do that? And then the culverts are filled and cleaned. You guys have to clean them more than you want to. So they're undersized and plus they all silt up and everything. but suggesting that if the county is maintaining these roads, that they maintain the ditches that are existing, like either take a grader and make it bigger or dig your grader in there and just kind of create a little more space for the water to flow. And then for those either private culverts or county culverts, having some accountability if they are private, that they need to remain free and clear.
Are you talking about digging ditches or increasing the size of the ditches on private property? Is that what you're suggesting?
I think it's in the right of way of the county roads.
It's, yeah.
I'm just saying, just like, it's just,
Everything on Second Street. A lot of the water that you're getting is getting diverted even before it gets to that driveway.
yeah. Yeah, I know, and by the time it got to me, it was just fine silt and a bunch of needles and stuff.
And it used to go into the storage unit. before that.
Right, and they built a berm.
And they burned up.
And then we had a conversation after that happened, and I said, I don't wanna build a berm, will you guys do something? And nothing happened for 4 years.
So it's flowing down that side of this, it's flowing down your
Yeah.
side of the street before it even makes it into the driveway.
Yeah, it comes off the surprise and it just kind of fans out.
Yeah.
And it also hits the culvert uphill on Second Street, which is blocked, and then comes over and it hit Palantes from that specific direction. But I mean, this is a big issue and it's been kicked down the road for so many years. And I know you heard a lot from me, but I think if we were to follow the track upward and back in time, it's that garage, and it was approved by the county.
Okay, and again, we're not gonna try to solve the 5-year mudslide, but the regular microburst as we talked about. We'll see how we can address better. Brian?
That's why we put those,
Attachment in?
Yeah.
Right,
Detention.
right, well, and that is something, I mean, is it possible, do you think that will help? I mean, that's why we did it, right?
It's already. It'll help.
It has helped the first time, right, so
It's not intended to be a fix-all, or it's just intended to just relieve.
put the brakes on a little bit.
Smaller rains,
Yeah.
And also it's a lot of shorter events.
Okay,
Yeah, but I do agree that we need to be looking at wider scope solutions here, because, you know, that's great, that that's working now and it's slowing it down, but, you know, there's
Yeah.
bigger issues
I mean,
here,
yeah,
so.
there's a lot bigger issues, and the reality is, it's been an issue for 50 years.
Yeah.
So the solution is
So
a
let's
lot
fix it.
bigger, it's a lot bigger than, you know, cleaning out an 8-inch culvert for it. It's a lot bigger than.
Well, just for the record, I like Andrew's idea of just like going to the homeowner. And also, I just wanted to say thank you for not blading down the berms that we have to build to defend our own property.
Lynn?
Yes, and specifically on Second Street, is it possible to go ahead and deepen that ditch just a little bit, county, maybe, or?
Yeah, our crews are gonna be in here working when they are. We'll have them, yeah, we can have them pull those ditches, because they're gonna be, and a lot of people park on Second Street too. Now that stretch there's a lot of cars that park on the road, they use the road as their parking. You know, that shoulder. The winter.
The one like just this side of the street, or are you talking about the other side where the driveways are?
Where the driveways are.
Okay, what about this side though?
Well,
Second
if we
Street?
dig on that side, then we're gonna be putting a ditch on the side where it's been blowing over. And that's where everybody's been building their berms. I don't think anybody wants, and I don't wanna dig on that. You don't wanna disturb that hillside at all, because it's gonna,
I guess just another thing, just speaking on culverts, but maybe rethinking a culvert idea and not having a cylindrical culvert, but maybe a box concrete with like a metal grate over it that you can drive over, but you can pull it off and easily clean it. Yeah. Just something, maybe just rethinking culverts.
It just fills up like the one here at the post office, and then you guys have this full of great citizens.
Then you don't have to.
You got a back truck?
No, we don't have a back truck. We know.
But that way you wouldn't have to rent one.
So the only culverts we have are at the intersection. We don't, our culverts are, and the majority of the time, you know, our culverts, even after the storm is over, they're open. Our culverts that convey water from 4th Street or from 3rd Street to 2nd, and it's down, you know, along the rig.
Well, I think we need to maybe look at the engineer's report and understand more of us, what came out of that, and then consider whether there's either a need to implement that report or that suggestion, or to look for other solutions that perhaps involve some of the homeowners. Okay, thank you. What was our next, chip and seal of Placerville streets?
Yeah. Tom, he's gonna have the crew in here starting this month, and they're gonna be in, cleaning the roads, working and getting all the drainage. They're gonna be doing some asphalt patching. And, we did most of the trimming last year. We got pretty close last year before we got that big rain event. But they're gonna be in here getting it prepped up, ready to go. So between this month and next month is all the final prep work. And then in August, I believe it's around the third week of August is when we're gonna be in here resurfacing the roads. So before we get there, we'll be posting notice that, we're gonna need access to the full width of the paved surface now, so that we can resurface that. And then, we should be in and out of here in 2 days.
And just so you know, that was scheduled for last summer, and I'm sorry, I don't remember why it didn't get done.
Well, we had a major.
The rain event, thank you, right. And
2 weeks before.
the reason it hasn't happened already is because the oil delivery, as I understand it, we can't get until August, is that correct?
In the winter time, we have to, we put it out to bid, in, I think it was January. And so by the time that we awarded the bid, we had to get into the schedule on when they're moving around. The company that's coming in is from the Front Range. So we had two, one from the Front Range and one from Vernal, Utah. And so those are the companies that we're working with. They have a busy schedule where every single week they're moving throughout the state. So we have this much of a window to get it done. If we miss that window, then.
So we hope that's a dry week.
Yeah,
August.
exactly. And dust control is very similar. It's the same thing. Dust control this year, typically we do it in June. Typically, we're doing it right now. We're finishing up. But this year, we got notified by GMCO that they didn't have enough drivers and they were behind schedule and they weren't gonna be able to get to our roads and then move it to fine. So that pushed us back a little bit this year. And that's just, those are factors beyond our control because we don't supply it and
Staff it ourselves.
yeah.
Scott,
I just wanted to get a little feedback from last year when that road work was being done. The signage was really, really big and a lot of people didn't know what was happening and what it was for, and what the cones were for, and it was a little bit vague, so I don't know if you have some better signage for that, so people know what's coming, they know exactly what's coming.
Thanks for that.
Well, we can definitely work on that. We want everybody, we don't want it to be a surprise when we show up. We want everybody to know what's going on.
Everybody saw a bunch of cones and some vague stuff, but nobody really knew exactly what was happening. So.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, the signs got rained out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
do you have a comment?
Just a question.
Sure.
Chris, Delaney Haynes, will you be cutting, any of the weeds back, along the roadway this summer?
We'll be cutting the weeds, because we'll have to cut the weeds to expose the end of the roads.
Okay.
When did you say you're gonna do the paving in August?
That's when we're gonna do the chip seal.
So is that like early August, late August, mid-August?
Talk about, so.
Soon as
he's talking
monsoons.
prep.
That's what I'm worried about.
He's
You know,
talking
get
about
that window.
Prep this month, the skim patch coverage in July, and so then it's ready for the oil and chip seal in August.
Yeah, so I'm just asking because, we typically have lots of rain from mid-July to mid-August. So if you're saying, we only have that 2-day window, we lose it because of the rain, then you've done the preliminary work and we wait another year.
That's, unfortunately, that's.
Ryan, is there any way to reach out to this company and ask if they could maybe move that project into September perhaps, and move another project up into August just to get us out of that monsoon?
We would have to coordinate with Uray County because we teamed up with them. I know that
They might
last
have
year,
similar concerns though, really, I mean, monsoons aren't.
Yeah.
They're all,
You can pave in the rain, you can't pave in the mud.
so last year we chipped the first week of September, the last week of August, the first week of September. Uray County got beat up bad by their residents because it was right around the same time when school was opening. So there was all that congestion around the school, the traffic, the having to deal with the county crews out there working on it, and they got beat up. They said, we're not doing it that time of year ever again. So we tried to get it around that time, but it didn't work with our schedule. So, we're trying to keep it as close to that. We still have to have time to get the roads ready, the asphalt surfaces ready, after we've gotten all our gravel surfaces ready for dust control. So, I mean, if we did it in June, if we did it early in the year, then we wouldn't be getting any of our gravel roads ready until the end of the summer. So that would be the trade-off. We can do the asphalt early, but we won't be doing any grading or anything else until the end of the summer.
Are you doing a road now, or are you just doing a chip cover?
We're just doing the same surface that's on it
Okay,
right now,
okay.
because that's all that's on it. It's just
Yeah,
chips.
yeah.
So if we build that out, it would just be dirt.
So I think the question was, can we move it later in September after the monsoon? I guess the monsoon's generally in, but it sounds like a big puzzle statewide in terms of scheduling.
Taking out another county or whoever else.
Or a mudslide, then maybe we can for 2027, flip the whole thing if we have to, or bring in a contractor to do the gravel or something else, because we will not let this happen year after year, right?
It's not that we're letting it happen.
No, but that's when it's scheduled and we come to realize that it's just impossible to get it chip and sealed in August, then we're gonna have to look at a different schedule.
So we have about 6 months of our season to be able to do
All
all
the
the road
work.
work that we have to do in the entire county.
I know.
So, I mean, it'd be fantastic and to be able to schedule things around for our convenience, but unfortunately, we have to work with what we're given and everybody else in this area. Every other county that's trying to get all of their projects done at the same time. Came later in September, and it wound up being like, I think the 4th week of September. I don't know if any of you guys were here for that, but that was when, all the roads that we chipped because the roads got too cold and we lost the temperature and
That's
all of
right.
the aggregate came off the village, and it was a fiasco for about 2 years after that, because we tried to push it later
Later.
and missed the monsoons.
Okay.
So we lose, what we gain here, we lose in surface temperature, we lose in ideal conditions for doing that type of work, so.
Good information. Yeah.
We have to do it when it's warm enough and the roads up, surface is warm enough, so.
Thank you, Ryan.
Appreciate you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the killer, is that we spend all this time in a 2-hour event, and we've got all of our work is done. Yeah.
Okay, so that was our agenda topics we wanted to cover. We had thought we might be able to finish up a little early at 6:40 so we could get to Janet's project. But we definitely want to allow time for open comments and questions. So let's just take that and then we'll see how many minutes that takes and let's go. What else? I heard, yes, sir. Can you please remind me of your name?
Ryan Millard, I'm
Yes.
on Specie Mesa.
Nice
I
to
want
see
to
you.
talk about M44. I gave a public comment at the last BOCC meeting about the danger of that road. How it's, it's just tore up. It's the worst it's been since I've been up here, and I've been up here since 2016. So we're trying to find out, A, what's the plan? Because nobody's really talking to us. We're being told you need to put your car in 4-wheel drive. Which is kind of condescending to me because I've been driving on mountain roads all my life, and I'm 63. So I don't need to be told to put my car in 4-wheel drive. Not necessarily saying that it's the residents up there that need to be
Educated,
reminded.
yeah.
But it is a hazardous road. It's down to the sub base. And I know there's other people from the mesas up there that will probably have some of the same comments.
Yes, we can address that, actually. That was going to be our last agenda item, but then we're running out of time. So I'm gonna turn this over to Mike Bordonia so that he can talk about and Ryan to talk about a bigger plan for the dirt roads.
And not to discount this as an agenda item, it's
Yeah.
very important and we knew it was
Gonna
going to
come up.
come up. So,
Yeah.
We've been hearing from a lot of Specie Mesa residents recently about M44.
For good reason.
Yeah, and we've been going out and driving it and our staffs have been driving it too. So Ryan has reallocated some of his Norwood crew next week to do some significant work on M44. At the same time, we're gonna be putting out a contract for a private contractor to look at rebuilding significant sections of a lot of our mesa and dirt roads. Ryan's been really good about trying to stay within his budget. And I feel like we're at the tipping point now where there's so much pressure that we need to do something much more significant. So we're gonna be trying to execute on that contract this summer. And then starting next year and years out, we're gonna be looking to pave some sections of the steepest parts of these roads, because as you know, there are sections on N44 that are gonna be unsustainable as a gravel road, especially with the vehicles that are traveling it now versus 10, 20 years ago.
and the
So,
amount of traffic.
yeah, so that's an oversimplified way, but we are putting out that contract for bid next week. And then we're gonna be looking to bid out paving of specific sections of these roads. You know, we know about 57P, 58P, and 44, and
That doesn't
60
take-
M.
That doesn't take the immediate issue.
No, next week, the immediate issue is.
What are they doing next week?
So let's turn it
They
over to
just
Ryan
graded
to
it.
talk about that.
What's that? 2 weeks ago.
They
It's
spot
just
graded.
Spot graded 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Didn't fix.
It was better for about 2 days.
Yeah.
We used to put
Okay,
those
so I think Ryan will address that. What is it that you're gonna have the Rice Mesa crew come over?
Well, we're gonna have the West End crew. I spoke with Alan. This M44 was on there to get some gravel on that steep section this year. It was already on the 5-year plan. We've been working, when I got here, we had a 10-year plan that had 50 years of projects on it. It was completely unattainable. I've been trying to develop a plan that our crews can do every single year, and that's within our budget. Thing is, recently, we've had a lot of, not just, with our staff, but even with private contractors, but it's been difficult to find operators and find employees. And so we've been really light, especially on the east end of the county, and our crews, they're just not capable of even doing the amount of work that we should be able to do in our 5-year plan. But going on that, M44 was on there for this year. It was about 2 miles of the road where once you start the steep section, the bottom section is not too bad, but once you start the steep section. And so I spoke with our West End supervisor, and he's gonna pull his guys, put them together, and we're gonna start hauling and do that section, which is from the top of the world there down 2 miles. So right where you start that steep section, right where there's really no material for us to regrid.
And
Down
when do they
52?
do that?
We wanna do that before we get dust control on it. That way we can put the dust control material on top of that, and then it'll help stabilize it.
So you're gonna P52 down 2 miles or?
Speed Street.
What's
And
that?
P52 is the steepest leg road.
Yeah.
Which bifurcates top of the world, and Speaks Mesa Ranch.
From top of the world down 2 miles. That's what we're gonna be working on. It's gonna be starting next week. It's probably gonna take the crews a couple weeks to get it done. So that means you're gonna
I'm
put
sorry,
road
you're right,
base,
but just to clarify, you're gonna bring, the crews are gonna bring gravel in.
we're bringing gravel in.
And
we're gonna gravel-
expedite that, which was
Yes.
originally scheduled to be later in the summer, but that's going to happen next week.
Yeah, it was scheduled to be done this year. They're still trying to get all the roads graded after the winter time and get everything kind of, at least the first grading done before we apply dust control. So he's trying to get it to a spot where he can start working on his chip seal prep. He's behind, so that's why we've asked the crews from the west end to come over and start that with that gravel. And so they're gonna be doing that. It's about 3,500 cubic yards of gravel is what we're gonna be hauling in there. Now, that said, it's gonna be fresh gravel. We're gonna compact it, but it's still gonna be loose. So We don't mean it in a condescending way when we say, if you put your car in four-wheel drive, it reduces washboards and doesn't tear the road up as fast. We don't say that just to Specie Mesa people, we say that to everybody. If they ask, well, what can you do? Say, well, one thing that we can do collectively, and we do it in our trucks, is we can put it in four-wheel drive before we start up a steep hill. And it just helps. It doesn't, it's not gonna stop it, it just minimizes some of the damage. So,
I just want to summarize how we got here and why we are here right now, because we have been sort of an accumulation of complaints since I've been commissioner, which is now 2 years. And we tried a number of things, including adding crew, including paying a second differential for East End crews, including acquiring better equipment, and none of that has really helped because we just can't get enough people to do the work. As Mike mentioned, we've also been trying to stay within our budget. We have a 0.5 mil levy allocation to the Road and Bridge Department. I understand this is before my time, but there have been 3 attempts to raise that, and repeatedly the county has turned that down. And so we're now funding the Road and Bridge with general funds to quite a large extent, which is
1.4 mils out of the general fund.
an additional 1.4 mils. So it's not that we've been
And now we're
ignoring you.
looking to add more.
Yeah, we've been trying to kind of find less expensive and, I don't want to say easier, but, faster, I guess, solutions. And we now recognize that even all together is not enough. And so the commissioners have asked the staff to put together this plan for another hundreds of thousands of dollars likely will be spent this summer on rebuilding the worst parts of these Mesa roads.
And not to digress, but my property taxes have gone up 40% every year for the last 3 to 4 years. 40%. So, it's hard for me. I worked in government for 40 years. It's hard for me to hear we don't have the money when I know everybody in here is property taxes, probably done the exact same thing. And, so it's hard for us to accept that, well, we don't have the money. I understand when it comes to staffing and when it comes to getting, people to do the job. I get that.
Right. Well, and now I think that we have come to understand that we really do need to spend that money.
Well, it's also of that 40% increase, the county is not nearly the biggest part of that. So.
Yep.
27%.
21%.
Excuse me, today.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Axel.
So regarding M44, which I've probably been the biggest thorn in everybody's ass on this, are you gonna maintain the ditches? Because we're losing the road right now. Every time it rains, we're losing more road. And like he said, the tax thing, it keeps going up for us, but we don't see it. 10 years ago was the last time we had any roadways put on the road. And it wasn't a problem. Maybe 15 ago, maybe 15 years.
we've had a road base on that road since I've been here, so I know that that's not accurate. But, well, yeah, we are gonna pull the ditches, we're gonna rebuild when the crew's in there, the first thing they're gonna do is pull those ditches. And then they're gonna reestablish the drain, the flow lines, and then we're gonna rebuild the crown on that road so that everything drains properly.
The next question, can you borrow a vibrating compactor?
We're gonna we have mechanical compactors that we will be using when we do that.
The thing you drag behind?
It's a roller.
That's a roller, it's not a compactor. You need a vibrating compactor to push the fines into
We
the
have a
road.
vibrating compactor.
You do?
And we have, yeah,
Okay.
we do. Otherwise, it's just gonna come.
Yeah, it's just gonna come, and regarding the four-wheel drive thing, I appreciate you guys making signs for that, because it's not the residents that don't get it. It's all the contractors and the cowboys. I came up behind a flatbed truck full of cowboys the other day, and they were doing this. They don't care, they don't live here, they don't pay taxes here, Wolf Cattle Company doesn't care anything about the road, they're gonna get their cattle up and down. But people that are living up there, we're the ones that are most affected by it.
And one last thing that I'd like to say is, there's a law in Colorado that uphill traffic has a right of way. Can we get a sign down at the bottom of M44 that says uphill traffic has a right of way? Because I've been hit twice about that since I've lived here.
And it's like people just don't seem to understand that they need to move over. If I'm coming up and I got 5,000 pounds of water in the back of my truck, it's kind of hard for me to get out of the way. Or if I'm pulling my trailer, it's kind of hard for me to get out of the way. And that is Colorado law.
You're suggesting the sign at the bottom of the
At the
hill,
bottom of the hill,
not at the top where people would be
or
coming
even at
down?
the top, let's put one on both. Because people going up the hill, they're also doing the same thing, right? So, yeah, I probably should have said at the top of the hill as opposed to the bottom. But it might be effective to have one on either side, just to kind of remind kids.
Ryan,
Because-
Seth,
What are your thoughts on that?
That,
What's the feasibility of putting some signs like that
Well,
on
I mean-
different county roads?
I'm not, I don't know that statute verbatim, but I know that, I know that it has to do with the one-lane road.
Well, it's just, on,
It originated because of
CND, it says mountain road driving, uphill traffic has a right of way.
We're pretty much one lane in a
That's
couple
typically when
spots.
two vehicles can't pass each other, the uphill traffic has a right of way.
That one corner on our road, that's pretty much one lane.
And that means that
The other
if two vehicles, if two vehicles meet on a road where it's not wide enough for them to pass each other, the vehicle traveling uphill has a right of way. The vehicle traveling downhill has to back up to a point where they can allow the uphill vehicle to pass. That's, so, I don't know of anywhere on M 44 where I've met a vehicle that I didn't have room for two vehicles to pass.
There's plenty of places on M44.
Then one main curve where it really washed forward, it starts to get the worst.
Right after that's roads narrow.
That's it. And Mike, thank you for getting back to me on a Sunday. Sure. I put the road request in and he got back to me in an hour. Thank you so much. That meant so much to hear from you.
And don't get us wrong, it's not that we don't appreciate what you guys do, we do.
We understand.
It's just, it gets really frustrating, when, you know, I mean, the fillings in my teeth sometimes feel like they're at the bottom of my head. Just from driving up and down the road that I have to drive up and down almost on a daily basis.
So it's good to know you're gonna get on it next week. Thank you.
Okay, and I think we need to look into that statute, and whether it applies to what we consider a two-way road, Brian?
No, I know that, you consider putting them on like Imogene and Black Bear, you know, roads like they're, for those sides.
Yeah.
The Bobcat Road is just a narrow.
You guys put a counter in too on the road. Is that yielded any data yet?
Just 1 second. Brian, can we take this part offline? I think we heard you, and, we'll look into that as well. Excuse me, 1 second. There was a question about a counter on M44. Is that something we've done?
It's up.
And
Yeah,
do we have
is there
any?
any data yet? Is how what the traffic flow is?
Tom just put it up, he hasn't pulled the data yet,
Okay.
so we don't check it every day.
I'm
Check it
curious
We
to
check
see
it about
what
every
that
month
is.
or so. And we usually go up there, when we move it to another location, we'll pull the data at that time, that's usually how.
What would be the right process to share that data with the residents on M44?
I mean, if you want to see what the data is, we can, it all goes into like a shared drive. So I
Okay,
have to just figure out how to pull it out of the shared drive, because we're not gonna share the shared county drive with.
Just email us with a number.
so maybe after, I don't know what the right increment is, but maybe after a few more weeks, we could email the folks that we've heard from on M44 with that information? I mean, it'll be just data, right? It won't be compared to.
How many cars a day?
If you're interested in the data that we have on M44, just call the office or send us an email, and then we can respond to that.
Okay.
It doesn't have to go through the commissioners, you guys can come straight to the.
Is that Norwood office?
What's that?
Is that the Norwood office?
At the Norwood office, yes.
Yeah, so yeah, just as a reminder, you are welcome to call the commissioners if you're not getting a response from the staff, but we do have a phone number for the Norwood office, and then we also, more recently, within the last few years, I think, put in, Axel, which you used, I think, a request for road repairs, which I know is the fastest way to get a
It
response.
instantly goes to all of us.
Yeah.
So,
That goes to you
that's,
guys too.
yeah.
No, that works great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why Mike got back to me within an hour of me putting that in there, which is above and beyond. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, Commissioner Gleason had a point also to share regarding road use and expectations and so forth.
We're gonna meet with Telluride area realtors later this month on the 25th, just to talk about increased road use and setting expectations with potential new landowners as to what rural living looks like and expectations for driving on county roads and how they deteriorate based on usage. We've decided this is a good idea to try to outreach to the realtor groups and communicate
The reality.
To
the realities,
residents.
the realities and the expectations that
Yeah.
come with the
Well, and
reality.
the other reality of M44 is it's the alternate to Norwood when they have to close the game.
Absolutely.
Last week.
Yes. It becomes a thoroughfare, so, yeah.
All right, so quicker fix for those 2 miles on M44, and then we'll be other similar issues throughout the summer. And then next year, start looking at actually paving some of those steeper grades and windier grades, which, probably isn't our first choice, but it feels like we've come to that, on certain sections of the road, so. Anything else you want to mention generally about the roads? Finished off our agenda. Okay, other questions and comments?
One quick question, is there any plan to bring any fiber optic internet down here to Placerville?
Okay,
We recently got a plan from Clear Networks showing them bringing in, fiber on the sample lines, so above grade. And, today they were out trying to figure out the
fiber from Newpla into Telluride. And now they're using that to loop back down Valley over Iron Springs to tie back into Norwood. Doug got a BEAT grant for several $1 million 2 years ago. And I don't know why it's taken him this long to act on it. It might have been the federal funds availability or something, but we're providing the use of the county's conduit that we had installed during the CDOT lane widening project from Ilium down Valley for free to expedite it.
Okay.
So does that mean there are gonna be 2?
So there's already Lumen,
Providers?
who used to be CenturyLink, Lumen Fiber, and then Region 10. We worked with Region 10 to purchase the dark fiber from Tri-State in Sampa.
My understanding is that, CenturyLink Lumen is phasing out.
They're phasing out of their existing system, and it's due to their equipment. So they won't be supporting their existing T1 lines for many places, but most folks are already on Starlink or other options. But Doug said that project is going full throttle this summer. But I'll be honest, I've been told this from Doug for a while. And I know that he's had a lot of acquisitions, his company's since been acquired again. But I'm hopeful because his federal funds are gonna run out. And I think anybody who's sitting on federal funds right now knows you can't waste a minute before you get spent.
But they did ask us about whether or not they needed development permits for what they were doing, here in the Placerville area. So I consider that very positive. Anytime they ask us if they need a permit, I consider that really positive.
Fletcher?
Yeah, just a quick tip in case anyone's not aware, the T-Mobile tower at the top of the hill here is now offering residential 5G service. It's like about twice the speed of zero on Brainstorm.
The hotspots were better on T-Mobile.
Hotspots are good.
So knowing also that AT&T and Verizon are probably the 2 biggest providers in the area, I've reinitiated with the Emergency Telephone Authority and our surrounding counties to try and put pressure on Verizon and CenturyLink to get spots.
AT&T?
I'm sorry, what did I say?
CenturyLink.
Yeah, I meant AT&T, Verizon and AT&T to get spots on that tower that's on top of Dallas Divide to provide coverage down 62. And obviously we want to get coverage in the San Miguel Canyon as well. So that's something we're in the midst of, trying to get them to do, and we'll find out how we can incentivize that.
Can we address Scott's question about the Down Valley Connector Trail, just because that got redirected?
Sure. For those who aren't familiar with the project, the Down Valley Connector Trail, the county conducted a feasibility study for this trail. And this is a 3-mile trail, which would start at the county's Down Valley Park, go up 145, all within CDOT right of way, and terminate at just beyond Saw Pit Mercantile. And then we have 2 bridges. One bridge would cross over to the old railroad grade, continue on down. And then we'd have another bridge which would cross back and then connect you with the county's M59 River Trail. So we hired OTAC at the time. Those were our consultants, and we made a presentation. Well, we conducted numerous community meetings, and we divided up those 3 miles, that 3-mile stretch within the 145 corridor, into 5 segments, met with community members and everyone who resides within those segments. And then we made a presentation to the county commissioners, and we decided that out of the 5 segments, we felt that segment 1, which is at this end at the Down Valley Park, and segment 5 at the opposite end within the Saw Pit community, that those would be the 2 worth pursuing first because they provided immediate community benefit. And having said that, we felt 1, because it gets kids safely to bus stop and the Down Valley Park, and 5, because you can get to the Mercantile and again connect with M59 and up through Telluride. So since we initially got CDOT funding for the feasibility study, it has been requested that we adhere to ADA requirements. So that then dictates the width of the trail, the surface type of the trail, and it also exponentially increases the cost of the trail. But we did receive good news within the past few days, and I had a conference call this morning. CDOT notified us that this trail project has been prioritized with the GVTPR, which is the Gunnison Valley Transportation Region. So it's given priority status, and granted, they're going to be setting aside funding for various trail projects within the region over the course of the next 10 years. So, I mean, it's great that, you know, we're within this mix. Again, other projects are also within the mix, but it helps to be included. And the next steps on their end, they're going to be having meetings, and I think we're going to hear by August what our status is. And again, it's 10-year funding. I'm still allowed to pursue separate grant dollars for the engineering and design. And they actually said it's positive, and you know, it makes it look like we're taking our project seriously. So by me pursuing separate grant dollars actually heightens the priority status of our project. So anyway, engineering and design, next steps for segments 1 and 5. And I update the county website, you know, and when we do have definitive measures and steps and timing, I'll probably conduct additional community meetings with the residents within those segments, and just provide updates. And again, I've been updating the website as we go. So you can always tap into the website or just call me or email me.
So you're pursuing grants for design and engineering, but the CDOT money would be for construction?
Well, the CDOT funding is for everything and for all 5 segments.
Okay.
So whereas,
Engineering and construction,
it's for
and it was one of the
yes.
top 3 projects that it chose.
Yes, so it's great news, and so when we conducted the feasibility study, we acquired CDOT multimodal option funding, which put us on the map with CDOT already, because they were part of the project, part of the feasibility study itself. So they were already very much aware of our trail project, and so it was great that they were already aware of what we were proposing to do. So it was nice to be given the good news that we've received some priority status, and just hoping for good news as we move forward.
And a big thank you for all the work that led to that.
Oh, thanks, Fletcher. Awesome. Appreciate it. So there is a multi-year time frame.
Yes.
It is. Okay, we are well past 7 o'clock. Is there any burning other issue, question, comment? We can stay a bit longer. We don't want to cut people off. No, okay, I think we're done then. But Janet has graciously offered to stick around and answer questions about this Front Street, these alternate Front Street schematics, and hear from you on those as well. Yeah, I think that's where we are right now. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.